Hi there, this is Handmade House TV and I'm Noah Bradley, and on today's episode we're going to talk a bit about log cabins, so stay tuned. Well, alright, today we're going to talk about log cabins, in particular the little log cabin that's standing right behind me here. If you've been following along, you know that about a year and a half ago I built this little log structure, and it was part of the Log Cabin Academy course. And in it I encourage people that if you're interested in building a log cabin, that it's wonderful to start with a small structure, in that if you can build something small, you gain all of the knowledge and all of the skills and all of the tools, plus a lot of confidence in building a large log cabin afterwards. It's fairly inexpensive. I built this little small cabin for a little over $200 at the time, out of wood that I salvaged, harvested here on my own property. I brought in a portable sawmill, sawed them up, and I notched them all and put them here in place. And with the idea that I would make use of this structure at some point in the future when I bought my own land. And if you've been following along here on Handmade Houses, you're aware that I recently purchased my piece of land, and so in the coming months I'm going to disassemble this log cabin and move it to my property where I'm going to put it to use. So today I thought we would come out here and take a good close look at it. How does a log cabin hold up outside in the environment? Rain, snow, sleet, harsh sunshine, and cloudy days such as today, without a roof on it. Does it really hold up okay? And what kind of rot or decay are we going to experience? And it's going to be a revealing thing. So if you notice that the first thing that you can see behind me here is that, first of all, the privet that the log cabin was growing next to was nowhere near as invasive as what it is right now. It's clearly grown over, and you can see that the time has passed by. The second thing that you'll immediately notice is the color of the logs. When I first put it up, these are walnut logs, and there was definitely a heavy contrast in color between the dark heartwood in the middle of it and the almost white sapwood on the outside. And clearly you can see that it's all grayed down to a wonderful natural patina at this stage. I'm a big fan of allowing logs to return to their natural state, to establish an aged patina, that gray color that it seems like almost every species likes to go to. It's much better than taking the route of high maintenance, of putting log sealers on it and trying to maintain the logs as if they look fresh and new and right out of the sawmill. Not to mention, it's a lot cheaper to do that, plus better on the environment. All of those toxic materials don't flow into the environment. So by building a small cabin right now, or even a full-size cabin, if you imagine putting up a cabin in the future, you can set up your entire full-size cabin, not have a roof on top of it, and it will mature, it will age inside and outside exactly the same. You won't get any discoloration from partial aging as that comes about. So this log cabin, I have put no sealers, no water repellent. I've done absolutely nothing to it other than to build it, finish it, and walk away from it until right now. It appears that all of the logs are in great shape. I don't see any sign of any rot or any fungus anywhere on it. There's a couple places where I did some patch chinking just to demonstrate exactly how to do chinking. And it's held up remarkably well as well. There was some heavy concerns on my part because I was working with fresh green logs, and I was concerned that there would be a lot of settling and that the chinking put on so fresh when the log cabin had just been built that there might be some buckling or cracking involved in it. In fact, I went ahead and I put a tape measure from bottom to top, and I was expecting total height shrinkage on all of these green logs to be in the 1 to 2 inch range overall, and I was surprised to find that the cabin had only shrunk about 3/8 of an inch, which is almost nothing considering it's nearly 10 feet tall. I've had a lot of people express concerns with problems they've had with their log cabin with regard to wood boring bees. And I see no indication of that happening at all. In fact, I've never really had an issue with that, and I have a feeling it must come down to the species of wood that we work with, and that if you're going with a real soft pine or a hemlock, or perhaps a cedar that's not the heartwood, it's not the redwood part of it, if it's just the white wood, that you're more prone to it. Whereas it appears that walnut, just like the other woods that I work with, that there's no desire for a wood borer to come in and participate here. There's no sign of any damage whatsoever. I am really pleased with the amount of cracking that has not gone on in these logs. Perhaps that has a lot to do with the species of the wood, which is walnut, but also it has a lot to do with the time of the year that I cut the logs. The best time of year to cut the logs is when the sap, the water, is not flowing in them, which if you're familiar with the maple syrup industry, they generally start to tap their trees in the month of February. And generally you don't want to cut down your trees when they have leaves on them. So that pretty much leaves October, November, December, and early January is the best time to cut down your trees for your log cabin. I am also pleased with the notches. I consider myself an A- kind of guy when it comes to doing notches. There are people that do them tighter than what I do. I do them tight enough. I was hoping that perhaps with some settling that they would have even gotten better, but it looks like actually there's no change whatsoever. They're just mighty fine. I don't notice any large gaps coming into it, which would be caused by some irregular settling going on. Everything's held up surprisingly well for me. I'm really pleased. So what is it about this particular log cabin that's allowed it to set out here with no sealers on it, no roof over top of it, for a year and a half and shown absolutely no sign of any rot or fungus going on? And it's the secret that I shared with you here on Handmade House TV in previous episodes, and that is that wood can get wet as long as it is allowed to quickly dry out. The traditional method of building a log cabin where the logs are separated from each other allows this process to happen. The wood gets wet from the rain and then quickly dries out. Rot is not allowed to take hold. The only point that the logs touch each other is in the corner notches, and all of the corner notches are sloped just like a good roof is. So any water that might get in there at all, which very little does, will quickly run off and drain out, and therefore there's no rot issues whatsoever. I've seen this process hold true for log cabins that have been standing outside on my own property in the past for up to a decade and still show no signs of rot whatsoever. Now, right next to this log cabin is the scrap pile of all the cut off pieces from when I put this log cabin up, where each little scrap piece is pretty much laying on top of the other, where it was allowed to get wet but it was not allowed to drain. And if I'm digging through that pile, I encounter plenty of rot going on in there. So if you stick with the traditional method of building a log cabin, you won't have rot issues. Whereas I can pretty much guarantee you that if I had put up a log cabin in the pole cabin technique or the new log cabin technique, where a log is on top of log without a roof on top of it, there'd be plenty of rot out here to discover today. Now, the reason why I picked this size for this little log cabin was several-fold. It was the length of the logs that I had to work with. It was the lengths of all that I wanted to work with. I put pretty much this cabin up entirely by myself. And also it's a traditional size for a little log cabin outbuilding. There are many different roof configurations that one can put on top of such a structure as this and have a fully functioning, handy to have outbuilding. Now, at the time that I put this up, I did not have my own piece of land, and at this stage I intend to, I could use a bigger log cabin than what I have here. So I'm intending in the coming months to put this log cabin up on my property, and I intend to stretch it to make it larger. And so I look forward to sharing some of those techniques with you here. Anyway, you guys, thank you for joining in today. I do want to thank 5 new members of the Handmade House Guild. They are Eric Foster, Bruce Thomas, Arthur Lindaker, Christina Johnson, and James and Linda Labordi. Thank you guys so much for joining the guild. Well, all right, that wraps it up for this week's episode of Handmade House TV. This is Noah Bradley. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you here next Wednesday. See you then. Bye now.